there is a universal experience that every single person has had from the very beginning of humanity to us even here present today. That experience is the hope to be wanted. Every single person has wanted to be wanted. And it's not something that's just a mere moment or a passing kind of feeling or emotion. It's something that seems to be written into the very core of the very human experience. Think about from the very moments that a child is born. The child comes, at least experientially, seemingly rather violently into this world. And everything is new. The lights are bright. The sounds now are probably intimidating. And they begin to cry out. And what's the one thing that seems to satiate a child who's just been born? To be held in the arms of a parent. And suddenly, and even without the child having a rational thought, that experience of being held so closely begins to speak to some desire that baby doesn't even know that they put there, that was there, but begins to respond and be held. When we're little children too, you think about it, one of the things that we're always wanting is people to see us. I've talked several times about my little nieces, a 6 and an 8-year-old, and they're just cute as can be. And any time that the family's gathered, it doesn't matter what we're doing, they will come in and just burst into the scene and behold me. They just want to be seen. They want to be wanted at these very young ages. And when that's fulfilled, it seems to awaken something. It gives a courage within us. It gives an excitement. In our teen years, okay, it might not be our parents that we want to want us. We turn off the Find My Friends that they're tracking us on. But we also, though, desire to have friends who want to be with us. When they call us and say, hey, come on over, it's something that excites us. It's something that feels very alive in us. A teenager's greatest fear is no one to hang out with. But when somebody does, how exciting is that? I suspect when we think back on our teen years, no matter how difficult or challenging they were, probably the best moments were when friends wanted to be with us. And then we grow up and get a little bit older and we go out into this world. And one of the things that occupies the minds of young adults, of course, is now, where am I going to fit in? Where am I going to find a group of people? I hear this so often with young people who move on, especially from college, and they're wondering, where do I fit in? Where are there people who want me to be with them? And when we find that, it's like something in us awakens, something more exciting happens. And then, of course, on the human level, there's the greatest moment of being wanted. Of course, in the beautiful gift of a marriage proposal. It's in that moment where two people have found each other and they discover that there's somebody in this world who wants to be with them, and not just for a moment, not just for a little bit of time, but somebody who says, I want to be with you my whole life. And rightfully, not only does that couple celebrate, but immediately they start calling their friends and their families. And what happens? It becomes a celebration and something exciting. And we all say, wow, what a party. What an amazing thing to celebrate. This desire to be wanted, while we might not always pay attention to it, and at times we might want to wish that we were almost independent of it. We might try to convince ourselves, oh, I don't need to have anybody want me. Deep down, though, we do. We might think that it's a flaw. We might think, oh, if only I could conquer that and be that truly independent person. But I'm here to tell you that that's not actually a flaw. You and I have been designed for that want. Because rewind all the way to the very beginnings of creation. God forms Adam there on the shore of that sea from the clay. He breathes his life into him, And then he looks at him and he says, "It's not good for man to be alone. For in fact, God designed us to want to be wanted." And on earth, we have our own experiences of being wanted from those little ages all the way up, especially to that, on the human level, that pinnacle, the beautiful gift of marriage. But there's even one more to fulfill it even further. And that, in fact, is God wanting you. See, if you look through the scriptures, one of the most common images that God uses to illustrate to you and me and to all of humanity of just how he wants to be with us, the most common image really that you're going to find if you read through all of Scripture that he says to illustrate just how desperately he wants us is actually nuptials, is actually a wedding. For you see, in the book of Revelation and other places too, Jesus describes himself as a bridegroom. And in our modern language, we've dropped the first bride part and we just call him the groom. He's the groom. If you have a groom, that implies you also have a bride. Yes, good. All right, half of you are awake. We're going good. We're going good. Yeah. You know, so you have this experience. If there's a groom, there must be a bride. And what's powerful is the bride is revealed as the church. And the church is not a thing, but is a who. For you see, you and me are the church. We are the one who God is actually pursuing and desires to be in a relationship with. And not a relationship of convenience, not a relationship of association, but a relationship that says, "I want you." And it's in that light, with that understanding, that we need to understand what Jesus gave us as images today in our gospel. It's rather interesting because Jesus comes up and he says to his disciples, he says, "Now I'm going to describe to you the kingdom of heaven." Now I admit, many times, unfortunately, when I hear the word heaven, my images have been poisoned really by a lot of Hollywood. Where when I hear the word heaven, I think of course, a physical place that can kind of be measured, and it's white, and frankly, it looks really boring. I look at it and I go, these images that are there of heaven, and like, oh, it's all white and peaceful. I'll be honest, I'd probably prefer to be at a hockey game than those pictures of heaven. But it's interesting, if we actually read the scriptures, that's not how Jesus paints heaven. And in fact, if we take Jesus seriously, which I hope you do, his image of the kingdom of heaven is not a location. For these three images that he gives us today of heaven have nothing to do with a place in the physical sense of the term. Look at how he describes heaven. Now, if Jesus will permit, I'm going to go in a different order than he gave them to us in the gospel. If I get struck down by lightning, you know he didn't permit, okay? But I'm going to start with the second image that he gave. And here's how he's speaking to his disciples. And if you're here tonight, you're a disciple. So he's speaking to you. And here's what he says. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it. Heaven is really, as he describes there, a merchant in search of fine pearls. A merchant who's studied and knows what he's looking for. He's not one to just kind of guess, but he's one who studies, examines, looks, and then, when he sees it, he then says, all right, That is the one I want, and I want it so much that I am going to sell not just some of what I have, I'm going to sell everything that I have, so that I can acquire that pearl. And think about how strange that almost sounds, because he's buying that pearl not because it has any use whatsoever. Think about it. A pearl is one of the most useless things we could possibly acquire as a human person. It has no function. It can't be used in any utilitarian way. It doesn't bring any type of light or power. And yet, here in this description of heaven, heaven is that merchant who looks out and says, this useless pearl is worth everything I got. And that is heaven. And heaven is not a place, but a person. For in fact, Jesus was not a man of mere words, but was one who lived out everything that he preached. For Jesus looked at you and saw you and said, I am going to buy you with everything I've got. And everything that he had was sold there on the cross to acquire you. Not because you're useful, not because you're successful, not because you bring something good to the table, but simply because you are you. And you are worth literally his entire life. If we ever have those moments in our life because of our circumstances, our situations, beyond our control, or maybe because of our making, where we're tempted to begin to think that we're unwanted, sit and pray with that description of heaven for just a moment. And you're going to discover the fulfillment of that desire that Jesus put in your very heart. Because he says you are so worth it. Just like that fine pearl. But that's not the only image of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus gave us today. Let's go back to that first one. The kingdom of heaven now, he says, he doesn't say like a merchant, but rather he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Now, the script is flipped. Now, heaven is the treasure that we pursue. The question put before us is, are we pursuing heaven? Are we pursuing Jesus? I think the danger can sometimes fall where we begin to think of heaven in the context of just kind of a conveyor belt. That yes, we go through our decades, maybe even a century that we have here on earth, and then just automatically we get up to heaven. That it's just the natural progression that's there at the end. See, the danger with that, and that is not found in Scripture anywhere, but the danger with thinking of that, what does it remove? It in fact removes love. For go back to our image of a wedding. Go back to that image of like a wedding proposal, for example. Yes, the man says, all right, I'm going to sell my money. I'm going to buy not a useless pearl, but a useless diamond. And I'm then going to arrange for it to have my cousin there hiding in the bushes with the camera. And I'm going to fly in her parents and my parents, and they're all going to be hiding. And then I'm going to get down on my knee, and I'm going to then open the box, and I'm going to propose, will you marry me? And she says, oh, I suppose it'll automatically happen. And he says, oh my goodness, I hope I kept the receipt. But no, what does it require? Her to say yes. And what a beautiful thing when we see two people who do want to say yes in that total and complete way. Where they say, yes, I found this other, and they're worth it. The question we have to ask as the church, as the bride, are we saying yes? Do we see Jesus as that treasure that's worth our all in all? Or do we see him as somebody that we could kind of fit into our schedule? Do we see them as somebody that, well, he's useful for a time, for a period. I'll reach out to him when things get really rough. But I got to make sure I kind of guard myself and keep to myself a bit. See, that's the great calling and the great question that's put before us in these beautiful analogies that are there. Jesus sees you and me as that fine pearl, worth everything. Are we ones who respond in kind? Are we ones who look to him and realize that in him I find the fulfillment of every one of my deepest desires? And this question lingers with us, and it's in that light that we need to see that third image of the kingdom of heaven that he gives. And this one veers off from those nuptials, from that wanting, to something a little bit different. And this one reveals a bit of the final judgment. Now, again, I don't know if you fall into this temptation, but I know for quite some time I certainly did. Where I kind of thought of the final judgment as kind of a tallying up of my good acts and my bad acts. Where I kind of said, okay, if I get the good acts to 51%, if I can just get to that 51%, then boom, I'm in heaven. Yes, I passed the test. Okay, I see the logic, but let's see if that holds up to really what Jesus is revealing here. And again, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a net thrown into the sea, which collects fish of every kind. When it is full, they haul it ashore and sit down to put what is good into buckets, what is bad they throw away. Thus it will be at the end of the age. The angels will go out and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. We hear about that separation of the righteous and the wicked, and we kind of begin to wonder, if we take it seriously, which one am I? But putting it in light of those relationships that are there, we have to see that wicked and righteous really is a definition of, am I pursuing the Lord? See, again, put it back into nuptials, put it back into the wedding situation. I know there's a lot of TV shows out there, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. To be clear, I have never watched either of those, okay? So I'm going off of what I hear from my sister, okay? But in those types of determinations, who should be the one to wed this bachelor or bachelorette at the end? And of course, everybody's watching around. And they start evaluating, well, it's the one who wants her the most. The one who's willing to make the sacrifices the most. If he's going to be one to marry her, he better be willing to sacrifice for her, to give her all. If he's one who holds back, if he's one who comes in and says, yeah, you're pretty awesome, but, Saturdays are for the boys, Does that sound like a man who's willing to sell it all? No, he's only willing to sell 6/7 of his week. When it comes to our judgment, too, the question's going to be, really, did we pay attention to how much the Lord loves us? And do we try to love him back? He knows we're not going to do it perfect. He knows we're going to mess up. He knows that we're going to fall short. And he still loves us. He still says, you're that pearl of great price. But we have to look and say, am I willing to love him back and really give it that shot? Am I willing to actually try to get rid of sin in my life? Or have I just kind of assumed that, well, sin's just part of the deal. If he really loves me, he'll take me that way. But are we actually going to try to get better and remove sin? Are we going to try to grow in virtue? Are we going to try and pursue him more and more? And even if we do it imperfectly, boy, he looks at us and smiles and loves us so dearly for that attempt. The fact of the matter is, you are God's pearl of great price. Wow, does he love you? He loves you with literally everything he's got. And your desire to be wanted is fulfilled in him. Allow that desire to turn to him and see him pursuing you. In your times of prayer, if you have nothing else that you can pray with, just pray with that beautiful image of him pursuing you, loving you, desiring you more than any human has ever desired you. And then watch what happens in your heart as you begin to desire him more, and then respond to it. And then whenever the end comes, we'll be carried forward into the heavenly embrace of him. And there'll be that beautiful nuptial wedding where the bridegroom Jesus and the bride his church truly meet in what we've all been made for, to be wanted and loved.